Good morning. Good morning. So, as is most important during this time, the Jewish response is every single time we meet, every time you meet with a group of friends during this time and you feel helpless, we replace that helpless feeling with three things: charity, prayer, and study. And so, as we've been doing since the war broke out, we'll do that. We'll start off. I have my tzedakah box here, and I'll put a little coin in. That's all you have to do. Is just put a coin in. So that doesn't have to be, people think of charity, oh, I have to think about how much I have to give, and I have to give a certain amount. No, just a coin. And I'll tell you what I do is right next to my charity box, I have $20 in nickels. And I just continue every day using my nickels and putting my nickels in. And when all the nickels are in my tzedakah box, I know there's $20 in nickels in there. So I take a $20 bill, I put it in the box, and I take the nickels, and I put them out, and I put them on my tray right next to it. And I keep on using the same nickels. So it's not about amount, it's about frequency. Well, there's amount, but there's also the value of frequency, of giving charity every day. Maybe during this time, I would say a number of times a day. It also replaces that helpless feeling. So there's our charity. Next, we will go to prayer. We'll do two prayers today. Right now, at our meeting here right now, because I'm about to head out, and as part of heading out, you have to be very aware of where the rockets are falling. I have all the various apps, and I see actually right now, as we are meeting here, there's been a barrage of rockets.
Yeah.
And so this we will say a chapter of Tehillim for those who need it the most, those people who are truly affected by this. It's very hard for us to sometimes feel that intensity that is felt there, but we really, it's so important that we not turn our mind away from it. So we'll do chapter 121 in Tehillim. I'll do it in Hebrew and I'll translate it to English. Shir Lamalot, Esayanai El Haharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Me'im Adonai, Ose Shamayim Va'aretz Al Yitain Lamot Raglecha, Al Yanum Shomrecha, Hine Lo Yanum, V'lo Yishan Shomer Yisrael, Adonai Shomrecha, Adonai Tzilcha, Al Yad Yeminecha, Yomam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka, V'yareach Balayla, Adonai Yishmarcha Mikora, Yishmar et nafshecha, Adonai Yishmar tzedcha voecha me'ata ad olam. A song by David to be sung on the steps of the Holy Temple. I lift my eyes while atop the mountains, searching from where my help will come. But I know my search is futile, because my help comes only from God, and I must look to him. For he is the maker of heaven and earth, and oversees the affairs of this world. God is a worthwhile support, because he will not let your foot slip. Your guardian does not slumber for even a moment, and will always protect you. For behold, God, the guardian of Israel, does not slumber and certainly does not sleep. God is your guardian, God is your protective shade, always at your right hand to protect you from danger. The heat of the sun will not harm you by day, nor will the coolness of the moon cause illness at night. God will guard you from all evil. He will guard your soul. God will guard you in your going and in your coming, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
We will now
Amen.
say a short prayer for those who are currently in captivity, the hostages. Israel announced that they have notified the families of 203 hostages, though they believe there are more, but there are 203 identified hostages right now. And anyone, I don't care what their political stance is right now, anyone that is a free-thinking person should understand that there is no reason at all for innocent people, children, babies, to be hostage during this time. There is absolutely no justification. I don't care what anyone says, and that these hostages need to be returned unscathed immediately. And we'll say this prayer. Achenu kol beis Yisrael, hanetunim batzara v'ashivya, ha'omdim vein bayam uvein bayabasha, hamakom yirachem aleihem, v'yotziim mitzara lirvacha, u'me'afela le'ora, u'mishibud legeula hashta ba'galav zman kariv. Our brothers and sisters, all the house of Israel who are in confinement or captivity, whether they abide on the sea or on dry lands, may God have compassion for them and bring them forth from confinement to freedom, and from darkness to light, and from enslavement to redemption, now, speedily, at a near time. Amen.
Amen.
We've done our charity, we've done our prayer, and now we go to our study.
Amen.
So today, as you can hear, I haven't really slept much, so I hope I can hold my thoughts together during this time. So I want to go into a Kabbalistic idea that I know that many of you really appreciate, and I think that this Kabbalistic idea has a lot to do with our current state during this time. So over the course of our time together over these years, we have approached the Sefirot from many different perspectives. But today I want to approach the Sefirot from a different perspective. Actually, specifically, I want to approach the three intellectual Sefirot. So I want to remind you, there are 3 intellectual Sefirot and 7 emotional Sefirot. The 3 intellectual Sefirot are Chachma, which we call, they translate it as wisdom, but it doesn't mean wisdom. It's the spark of creativity. It's the flash of insight. When you know something, but you can't fully explain it, I'm not talking about because you haven't slept, but you have that first moment with, but you can't explain it. You got it, but you're like trying to get it from on high. That first moment where there's just that challenge, that's Chachma. Bina, again, Bina is translated as understanding. I don't like that translation. What Bina is the logical and the analytical breakdown of the pre-existing creative idea. So you have that, you're grabbing for that idea in the Chachma world, that spark of creativity. And then once you have it, you have to analyze it and piece it apart and work it through. That's Bina. Now, these two are completely intellectual. One is almost not even. One is like grabbing the idea from above us. The other one, Bina, is the logical, intellectual, the analytical breakdown. But according to Kabbalah, neither of these two Sefirot lead to an emotional reaction. And I think you're going to start getting to where I'm going here. That's where we need the third one. That's Da'at. Da'at, I don't know, people say knowledge, but I would say more like connection. Da'at is the brainstem. It doesn't involve attaining any new information. Actually, what it does is it zeroes in and it focuses on a particular piece of information. And the point of Da'at is to make that piece of information personal and relevant. And by making it personal and relevant, what happens? It leads to emotion. It's the brainstem. It's the connection between the 3 intellectual Sefirot and the 7 emotional Sefirot. You need that connection. And that's what da'at is. Now, it's important to clarify that these three attributes have two possible modes. One mode is when they're dormant, like your computer's asleep. You're on sleep mode on your computer, it's dormant, it exists. All you have to do is press a button and it'll wake up. And that's when there's a capacity, a potential within the soul. Just kind of it's sleeping, but there's this potential and capacity within the soul. The second mode is when they're active, when the computer woke up, when they're active in our conscious life. So if I'm busy analyzing something right now, that means that my thought is being applied to the soul attribute of Bina. I'm pushing Bina out of its dormant state into an active state. Now, if I'm focusing on Bina right now, because I'm analyzing and I'm working through, I would say right now, literally what I'm doing right now is a Bina experience. No, so what is Chachma and Da'at doing at this moment? They're dormant, they're sleeping, because I'm in the process of doing Bina. In other words, my thought activates these three powers and bridges them with my conscious life. So, and this is what I want to get to. If I am worrying, I know I'm hitting on some very special Jewish mothers and grandmothers right now. I am sorry. But I think it's important because right now, so many of us are worrying a little more than usual. So if I'm worrying over something right now, by definition, it means that my thoughts are currently in the service of Da'at. My thoughts are currently in the service, in the capacity within the soul to connect to something and experience an emotional reaction over it. An emotional reaction. If I can manage to stop thinking about an issue, we don't ever stop thinking, but let's say stop thinking about a particular issue, that what I'm going to do in that process of not thinking about that issue is I'm cutting off the dot of this topic from my conscious life, and I'm putting it back in the dormant. It's not conscious. It's not at the forefront of my brain. And what this does is it cuts the supply line for the emotion. And because it cuts the supply line for the emotion, it's not going to be able to last. The only thing required for this is to truly have the ability to stop thinking about a particular matter. Now, we can never stop thinking, but to stop thinking about a particular matter. And so, as I was analyzing this, I was thinking, do we have this ability? Do we actually have the ability to stop thinking about a particular matter? According to Kabbalah, we do. Our internal makeup, our intellectual, our emotional makeup, which are the Sefirot, the nature of the 10 attributes of the 10 Sefirot themselves, is either not subject to change or very difficult to change. So again, the makeup, the intellectual and emotional makeup is either not subject to change or very difficult to change. However, behavior is within our control. The behavior is divided into 3 categories, which means the way that we express the Sefirot: action, speech, and thought. Kabbalah calls these domains garments, levushim, the garments of the soul, the garments of the Sefirot. So as opposed to the body, which is something we can easily change, garments are things that we put on and take off. And so think about the modality of what a garment is. It's not necessarily something that needs to be changed. It's something that needs to be removed and replaced. See, what I love about Kabbalistic metaphor is within the metaphor, you can really understand. There are some things that can be and should be changed. And there are some things, for example, like garments, that the only way to make that change is to remove and replace. That's why they're garments. Can you change a garment? Can I take my shirt and say, shirt, I will change you into a pair of pants? It doesn't work that way. But I can remove my shirt and put on a different shirt. So that's the process of the change, is the removing and replacing. That's the process of change. So we can control our thoughts. Not only we can, but I believe right now it is our responsibility to take extra care in controlling our thoughts. If we stop thinking, if we stop, no, we can't stop thinking. We can't, if we stop worrying about something, then we're going to cut off the supply lines for the emotion. The dot, this sephira, which sustains our emotions, can only be effective if we bridge it into our conscious lives. How do we bridge it into our conscious lives? With our thoughts. Only our thoughts can bridge it into our conscious lives. Just think about that a second. No pun intended. So by using the garment, removing and replacing, by changing the thought, that is how we make it happen. There's a very, very beautiful teaching. I want to bring it up here. I was looking at it earlier. It's a teaching from the third Chabad Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, Rebbe Menachem Mendel. He writes over here. I'm gonna read this thought for you because I think it's really apropos. He says each person. Each person has three soul garments: thought, speech, and action. We just spoke about this. That comprise the primary components of human behavior. The choice and power is granted to us to think, speak, and act according to our desire. Even if you are emotionally afraid, you're able to remove your thought, speech, and action from that emotion. Immediately upon letting go of the thought, the fear will dissolve on its own. Immediately upon letting go of the thought, the fear will dissolve on its own. At the very least, this is what he says, the fear will become dormant and will not be felt in your body. And over the course of a few days, it will completely dissipate to the point that it will not come up in your mind at all. Removing your thought from the fear will lead to the fear's dissipation, because emotions come from the faculty of dot by means of your thought. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so important. Removing your thought from the fear will lead to the fear's dissipation. Therefore, he continues, by removing your thought, dot is automatically removed from the emotion and it will not awaken. It's appropriate for you to train yourself away from all melancholy. You can remove the fear from your heart, even when there is something legitimate to fear. All the more so in your case, in which, thank God, you have nothing to fear at all. whether in matters of your health or finances. This is what Tzemach Tzedek says. I'll let it land for a moment. I was trying to find some kind of modern parallel to this. So here's the issue, and I a lot, when I was going through this process, a lot of it was in my chachma. I couldn't bring it down. I was having trouble bringing it down, and so there's this idea within psychology, and it's written up in a study that I saw. It says like this: try to pose for yourself this task, not to think of a polar bear, and you'll see that the cursed thing will come to mind every minute. If you stop trying to think about it, then that thing that you're stopped trying to think, you can't stand it. Like it keeps on coming back. So here, the Tzemach Tzedek has a very powerful idea, and I'm trying to figure out, how do you balance these two ideas? Because if you stop to think about it, it's just going to continue forcing you to think about it. So there's a noted psychology professor. His name is Daniel Wegner. And he tested this quotes assumption with a simple experiment. He asked the participants of a study to verbalize their stream of consciousness for 5 minutes while trying not to think of a white bear. So just if the white bear came to mind, he told them to ring a bell. And despite the explicit instructions to avoid it, the participants thought of a white bear more than once per minute on average of those 5 minutes. I know you're not surprised. It seems obvious. So, I mean, I don't know if we should do the thought experiment now, but I just wanted to give you the idea of how difficult this process is. And I want to bring into consciousness how important this process is. Now, it's not going to happen in a second, but this is something I believe that we need to do, and especially, we need to do it during this time. When we try not to think of something, a part of our minds checks in every so often to make sure the thought is not coming up. Right? That's part of the job, is not to think of something. So obviously, we're going to be checking to make sure the thought is not coming up. Well, what happens when you check to make sure the thought is not coming up? Boom. We end up thinking about it even more. And the emotion will be back. So I want to read the rest of the statement by the Tzemach Tzedek, because I think, see, until now, if we stop the teaching, we don't have the complete story. Listen to the rest of the statement. Let me go back to the reading here. And I'm just translating it here. I'm reading the Hebrew, but I'm just translating it for you. The primary method of removing thoughts from your mind, this is what he says, is by directing your mind towards other matters. This can be worldly things, if they're necessary to make you happy, and God's Torah, which delights the heart. By establishing fixed times for daily study, like what we're doing right now, particularly with another. Not to only study alone, but to actually study with another. So, as long as we're in the negative, what do I mean by the negative? As long as we attempt suppression, and only suppression, the harder we try, we're going to think of the white polar bear. The harder we try, the deeper we're going to get ourselves in the mud. When we attempt self-distraction, I think, and this is what the Tzemach Tzedek is saying, is that our efforts can get us somewhere. So if we wish to suppress a thought, it's necessary to become absorbed in something else that is interesting and engaging to us. So this letter from the Tzemach Tzedek, I think features an interesting combination. I'll give you the background. A disciple, a student of the rabbi, wrote him a letter, and he was complaining that he couldn't control his thoughts. And he was suggested to go to a rabbi. I forgot the rabbi's name offhand. But when he came back to the rabbi's home, he knocked and there wasn't an answer. And he knocked louder and then louder, and there was no answer. And when he went back and he banged on the shutters, but there was no answer, the hour was late and he had nowhere to go. So he curled up by the doorstep and he fell asleep. In the morning, the rabbi opens the door and he invited the man in. And he told the man, you see, I am the master of my house. If I don't want to enter, or I don't want you to enter, you're not going to get in, no matter how hard you try. And this was his lesson to the man. So the man was writing about his worries, and in the actions, in the dots, he was able to understand what was going on. And what the Tzemach Tzedek did is he explained the logic, the feasibility. Everyone is different. There are various forms of worries. We have all different types of worries. Some of you are professional at all the different types of worries. But I think, and this is what I learned from this study here, the goal is the same: to clear our minds from worrisome thoughts that cause undesired stress. That's the goal. To remove worrisome thoughts. And whichever method you employ, that is such an important thing for us to do right now. So I have a lot of other ideas with regards to this thing, but maybe we'll continue going over this as time goes on. That is my initial thought for today. I'd love to hear your feedback and where your processing is going and what's happening here and how you're processing this information. And so I'm going to turn off the recording. And so for those of you who are just watching the recording, I want you to take a minute now and process it. And obviously through that process, I hope that you can have in mind those who need our prayers. And remember, every single time we get together during this time, charity, prayer, and study.